Jake Morrison walked into the huge meeting room on the space station. The room was bigger than most houses back on Earth. Giant windows showed the stars and other ships floating in space. The table in the middle was so big that 20 people could sit around it easily, but Jake was not 20 people. He was just one small human. The aliens around the table were much bigger than him. The Krellian looked like a giant bug with 4 arms. His name was Vextar, and he was almost 9 feet tall. His hard shell was dark green and made clicking sounds when he moved. 2 other Krellians stood behind him like bodyguards. On the other side sat Ambassador Flux from the Etherian race. The Etherians were made of gas and had to wear special suits to keep their bodies together. The suit was clear, and Jake could see the purple and blue gas swirling inside. When Flux talked, the gas moved faster. The Zephyrian delegate was the strangest of all. Her people were made of living crystal that sparkled with its own light. She was called Crystalline, and she was beautiful in a scary way. Her crystal body was pale blue, and when she was happy, bright lights danced inside her. There were 4 other aliens at the table. The Vorthic delegate was covered in thick fur and had teeth like a shark. The Morphean looked like a tall, thin tree with too many branches. The Quillix had tentacles instead of arms and kept changing colors. The Braxon was the biggest of all, a rock creature that was 12 feet tall and 3 feet wide. All of them stared at Jake when he walked in. At 5 feet and 6 inches tall, he was tiny compared to them. He looked like a child next to these giants. Jake wore a simple blue uniform with no fancy decorations. He carried only a small black briefcase. His brown hair was neat, and his green eyes were calm. He did not look scared or worried, even though he was surrounded by creatures that could crush him easily. This is their best diplomat? Vextar clicked his mandibles together. The sound was like breaking sticks. The humans send us a child to make deals? The other aliens laughed in their own ways. Flux's gas swirled faster. Crystalline's lights flickered with amusement. The Vorthic showed his sharp teeth in what might have been a grin. Jake sat down in the small chair that had been brought for him. It looked like a toy chair next to the massive seats the aliens used. He put his briefcase on the table and opened it slowly. Inside were some papers and a small device. "Good morning, everyone," Jake said in a calm voice. "Thank you for meeting with me today. I know you are all very busy." The translation machines around the room turned his words into sounds the aliens could understand. Each species heard Jake speak in their own language. "Busy?" rumbled the Braxton delegate. His voice was like rocks falling down a mountain. "We are wasting time with you, little human? Your species has been in space for what, 200 years? We have been trading among the stars for thousands of years." "That is true," Jake agreed. He did not sound angry or upset. "You have much more experience than we do. That is why I wanted to meet with you today." Ambassador Flux made a sound like wind through leaves. "Little human, what could your young species possibly offer us? We have everything we need." Jake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that made smart people nervous. "I think there might be some confusion about what humans can offer. Let me tell you a story that might help explain." "A story?" Vextar clicked his mandibles again. "We did not come here for children's tales." "This is not a children's tale," Jake said quietly. His voice was still calm, but something in it made the aliens pause. "This is a story about the last species that thought humans were weak and easy to defeat." The room became quiet. Even the Quillix stopped changing colors and stayed a nervous yellow. Jake took out the small device from his briefcase. It was a hologram projector, the kind humans used to show pictures in the air. 3 years ago, the Raxan Empire decided that humanity was ready to be conquered. They were a proud and ancient species, much like yourselves. He pressed a button and a picture appeared in the air above the table. It showed a massive alien warship, much bigger than any human ship. The ship was dark metal with spikes and looked built for war. The Raxan were 12 feet tall with natural armor, Jake continued. They had been warriors for 10,000 years. Their military was famous across the galaxy for never losing a battle. The aliens leaned forward to look at the picture. They had all heard of the Raxan Empire. It was one of the most powerful military forces in known space. Admiral Korth of the Raxan believed that humans were soft and weak, Jake said. He thought we would surrender the moment we saw his fleet. So he brought 200 of his best warships to attack our outer colonies. The picture changed to show many warships moving through space toward a small human settlement. The human buildings looked tiny and defenseless compared to the alien fleet. The first human ship to meet them was a small frigate called the Lincoln. It was commanded by Captain Lisa Rodriguez. One small human ship against 200 Raxan. Warships. Vextar clicked his mandibles. The human ship was destroyed immediately, of course. You would think so, Jake said. His smile grew a little colder. But Captain Rodriguez had spent months studying the Raxan military. She knew how they fought, how they thought, and most importantly, she knew about their culture. The room was completely quiet now. Even the background hum of the space station seemed to have stopped. When Captain Rodriguez contacted Admiral Korthek, she did not threaten him with weapons. She did not ask for mercy. Instead, she challenged him to single combat. The aliens looked at each other with surprise. Single combat was an ancient tradition among warrior races, but most species had given it up long ago. The Raxan honor code made it impossible for the Admiral to refuse, Jake continued, especially when the challenge came from what he thought was a weak, inferior species. To say no would have meant shame for his family for 1,000 generations. Ambassador. Flux's gas swirled slowly. What happened next? Jake's green eyes seemed to grow darker. That, my friends, is where the story gets interesting. But first, I think you should understand something about Captain Rodriguez and about humans in general. He paused and looked around the table at each alien delegate. We may be small, but we are not weak. We may be young as a spacefaring species, but we learn very quickly. And most importantly, we never give up. The aliens shifted in their seats. Something in Jake's voice made them feel uncomfortable, though they could not say why. So what happened to your Captain Rodriguez? Crystalline asked. Her internal lights were flickering nervously. Jake's smile became even colder. She won. The aliens around the table stared at Jake. They could not believe what they had just heard. A small human had defeated a Raxan admiral in single combat? It seemed impossible. You lie, Vextar said, his forearms crossing over his chest. No. Human could defeat a Raxan warrior. They are twice your size and covered in natural armor. Jake pressed another button on his device. The hologram changed to show the inside of a Raxan warship. The corridors were huge and built for 12-foot-tall warriors. Everything was made of dark metal and covered in spikes. Admiral Korthek was confident when he agreed to the fight, Jake said. He had never lost a battle in 40 years of warfare. He was 8 feet tall, even without his armor. With his battle suit on, he was over 12 feet tall and weighed as much as a small car. The picture showed the massive Raxan admiral. His armor was black with silver spikes. His helmet had 4 red eyes, and his arms ended in claws that could cut through steel. He looked like something from a nightmare. Captain Rodriguez, on the other hand, was 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed 130 pounds, Jake continued. She was 32 years old and had been in the military for 10 years. The hologram showed a small human woman with short black hair and dark eyes. She wore a simple white combat suit with no decorations. next to the massive Raxan admiral. She looked like a child. The fight took place in the cargo bay of the Raxan flagship, Jake said. Admiral Korthak wanted his crew to watch him crush the human. He wanted to show them how weak and pathetic humans were. The picture changed again to show a huge empty room filled with Raxan soldiers. They were all watching from the sides as their admiral faced the tiny human in the center. The rules were simple, Jake explained. No weapons except what each fighter carried naturally. No armor except what they were born with. Fight until one could not continue. Ambassador Fluxes. Gas swirled faster. This seems unfair to the human. That is what Admiral Korthak thought too, Jake said. He was so confident that he decided to make the fight more interesting. He told his crew that he would defeat the human using only one arm. The aliens looked shocked. Even in their cultures, such arrogance was considered dangerous. The fight began with Admiral Korthak charging at Captain Rodriguez. Jake continued. He moved fast for such a big creature. His footsteps shook the entire cargo bay. He planned to grab the human and crush her in his grip. The hologram showed the massive alien running toward the small human. It looked like a mountain was about to fall on her. But Captain Rodriguez did not run away, Jake said. She had studied recordings of Raxan fighting styles for months. She knew exactly how they moved and how they attacked. The picture showed the human woman stepping to the side at the last moment. The Admiral's charge missed her completely, and he crashed into the wall behind her. Admiral Korthak was surprised but not worried, Jake said. He turned around and tried to grab Captain Rodriguez again. But she was not there anymore. The hologram showed the human jumping and spinning in the air. She moved like a dancer, but her movements had a deadly purpose. Captain Rodriguez had been an Olympic boxer before she joined the military, Jake explained. She knew how to fight opponents much bigger than herself. She had also trained in zero-gravity combat for years. The picture showed the human landing on the Admiral's back. Before he could react, she had wrapped her arms around his neck. Raxan necks are protected by thick armor plates, Jake said. But Captain Rodriguez knew about the weak spot behind the fourth plate. She had studied Raxan anatomy for weeks. The aliens leaned forward to watch the hologram. They could see the human's fingers finding a small gap in the Admiral's armor. What happened next took exactly 43 seconds, Jake said quietly. Captain Rodriguez applied pressure to a nerve cluster that most species do not even know exists. Admiral Korthak, a great warrior who had never lost a battle, fell unconscious. The hologram showed the massive Raxan admiral collapsing to the floor. The human woman stood over him, breathing hard but victorious. The Raxan crew could not believe what they had seen, Jake continued. Their greatest warrior had been defeated by a creature half his size. Some of them wanted to attack Captain Rodriguez, but their honor code forbade it. Crystalline's lights flickered with amazement. The human woman walked off the ship alive? She did more than that, Jake said. According to Raxan tradition, defeating their admiral in single combat made her the temporary leader of the entire fleet. She could have ordered them to attack their own people or destroy their ships. The aliens looked at each other nervously. They were beginning to understand that this story was more serious than they had thought. But Captain Rodriguez did not want to destroy the Raxan fleet, Jake said. She wanted to send a message. She ordered the 200 warships to return to their home space and never attack humans again. The hologram showed the massive alien fleet turning around and flying away from human space. The small human frigate followed them at a distance to make sure they left. The Raxan fleet obeyed her orders, Jake continued. They had no choice according to their own laws. Admiral Korthak was taken back to the Raxan home world in disgrace. He had been defeated by what his people considered a weak, inferior species. The Raxan delegate rumbled like an earthquake. This is an interesting story, human, but it proves nothing. One lucky victory does not make your species strong. Jake's smile grew colder. You are right. One victory proves nothing. But this was not the end of the story. He pressed another button on the device. The hologram changed to show a much larger fleet of Raxan warships. This time, there were not 200 ships, but thousands. Admiral Korthak had a son, Jake said. His name was Korthak the Younger, and he was even more proud than his father. He could not accept that his family had been shamed by a human. The picture showed a Raxan, even bigger than the first admiral. This one wore golden armor and carried weapons that glowed with energy. 6 months after the first battle, Korthak the Younger returned to human space, Jake continued. But this time he brought 5,000 warships. He did not plan to fight with honor or follow the old traditions. The aliens around the table shifted nervously. 5,000 warships was enough to destroy most civilizations. Korthak the Younger sent a message to all human worlds, Jake said. He demanded that Captain Rodriguez be handed over to face execution for his father's death. If humans refused, he would destroy every human planet until our species was extinct. The hologram showed the massive fleet surrounding human space. The human ships looked like tiny insects next to the alien warships. Surely your people gave up the captain to save themselves, Mextar said. It would be logical. Jake's green eyes became as cold as space itself. You still do not understand humans. We do not abandon our own, ever. The picture changed to show human ships arriving from every direction. Small frigates, large cruisers, cargo ships turned into fighters, and even civilian vessels with weapons. Attached, every human military ship in the galaxy came to defend Captain Rodriguez, Jake said. 37,000 vessels in total. Not to surrender her, but to protect her. The aliens stared at the hologram in amazement. They had never seen such a response from any species. But the human fleet was still outnumbered. Ambassador Flux pointed out, 5,000 Raxan warships against 37,000 human ships. The aliens had better weapons and armor. You are right, Jake agreed. In a straight battle, the humans would have lost. But Captain Rodriguez did not want her people to die for her. The hologram showed a single small shuttle leaving. The human fleet. It was flying directly toward the Raxan flagship. Captain Rodriguez decided to face Korthak the Younger herself, Jake said. She would board his ship alone and settle the matter with single combat, just as she had done with his father. The aliens watched in stunned silence as the tiny shuttle approached the massive alien warship. But this time would be different, Jake continued. Korthak the Younger had no intention of fighting with honor. He planned to kill Captain Rodriguez the moment she stepped onto his ship. The shuttle docked with the Raxan flagship. The hologram showed the human woman stepping out, armed with only a simple pistol and wearing basic combat armor. What captain Rodriguez found waiting for her, Jake said quietly, was not one opponent, but 50 Raxan warriors. Korthak the Younger had decided to teach humanity a lesson about the price of defeating his father. The room was completely silent. Even the background hum of the space station seemed to have stopped. Jake looked around the table at each alien delegate. That is when the Raxan learned the most important lesson about humans. We are much more dangerous when we are angry. The aliens around the table waited for Jake to continue his story. The hologram showed Captain Rodriguez standing alone on the Raxan flagship, facing 50 enemy warriors. Each warrior was twice her size and covered in armor. Korthak the Younger thought he was being clever, Jake said. He believed that by breaking the rules of single combat, he would show humans that honor meant nothing to the Raxan. He wanted to prove that strength was the only thing that mattered. The picture showed the young Raxan admiral in his golden armor. He was even bigger than his father had been. His claws were longer and sharper, and his armor had energy weapons built into it. But Captain Rodriguez had expected this, Jake continued. She had studied the younger Korthak's military records. She knew he was proud, angry, and did not care about honor. She had prepared for exactly this situation. The hologram showed the human woman looking around the cargo bay. She was calm and alert, like a hunter studying her prey. The 50 Raxan warriors attacked her all at once, Jake said. They thought it would be easy to overwhelm one small human. They were wrong. The picture showed the battle beginning. The Raxan warriors charged from all directions, their claws and weapons ready to tear the human apart. Captain Rodriguez had spent the 6 months since the first battle preparing for this moment, Jake explained. She had studied every recording of Raxan combat techniques. She had practiced fighting multiple opponents in zero gravity. She had learned the weak points of Raxan armor. The hologram showed the human woman moving like water through the attacking warriors. She ducked under claws, slipped between legs, and struck at joints in armor with surgical precision. The first warrior fell in less than 10 seconds, Jake said. Captain Rodriguez hit him in the exact spot where his neck armor connected to his shoulder armor. The blow damaged his nervous system, and he collapsed. The aliens watched in amazement as the small human took down opponents much larger than herself. She moved with incredible speed and accuracy. The second and third warriors fell together, Jake continued. Captain Rodriguez used their own attacks against them. She made them crash into each other, and struck them both while they were stunned. The Vorthic delegate showed his sharp teeth. Clever, but she cannot defeat all 50 warriors this way. You are right, Jake agreed. Fighting 50 opponents at once was impossible, even for someone as skilled as Captain Rodriguez. So she changed the rules. The hologram showed the human woman pulling out her pistol and firing at the lights in the cargo bay. The room became dark, except for the red. Emergency lighting. Humans can see better in the dark than Raxan, Jake explained. Their eyes are designed for bright sunlight. In dim light, they are almost blind. The picture showed the Raxan warriors stumbling around in the darkness, trying to find their enemy. But Captain Rodriguez had already moved to a new position. She began picking them off one by one, Jake said. A shot to the weak spot in their armor, a strike to a nerve cluster, a blow to their balance center. Each attack was precise and deadly. The hologram showed warrior after warrior falling to the invisible human. They could not see her, but she could see them perfectly. By the time the emergency lighting came back on, 30 warriors were down, Jake continued. The remaining 20 were scared and confused. They had never faced an enemy like this before. Crystalline Cess. Lights flickered with concern. What about the Admiral? What was he doing during this battle? Korthak the Younger was watching from the upper level of the cargo bay, Jake said. He was angry that his warriors were losing, but he was also beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. The picture showed the young Admiral in his golden armor, looking down at the battle. His red eyes were wide with shock and fear. The last 20 warriors tried to work together, Jake said. They formed a circle and moved slowly, trying to protect each other. But Captain Rodriguez was no longer fighting like a soldier. She was fighting like a human who had been betrayed. The hologram showed the human woman's face. Her expression was cold and determined, like someone who had moved beyond anger into something much more dangerous. She attacked the circle from above, Jake continued. She climbed the walls of the cargo bay and dropped down on them from the ceiling. By the time they realized what was happening, half of them were already down. The aliens watched in stunned silence as the small human tore through the remaining warriors. Her movements were fluid and deadly, like a predator that had found its prey. The last warrior standing was the biggest of all, Jake said. He was almost 14 feet tall, and his armor was twice as thick as the others. He thought his size would protect him. The picture showed a massive Raxan warrior facing the small human woman. She looked tiny next to him, but she showed no fear. Captain Rodriguez walked up to him slowly. Jake continued. She looked him in the eyes and said something that the ship's translators recorded. She said, "You broke the rules. Now you learn what happens when you make humans angry." The hologram showed the human woman jumping straight up at the giant warrior. She moved so fast that he could not react in time. She landed on his shoulders and wrapped her arms around his. "Helmet," Jake said. Then she twisted his head until his neck broke. The sound echoed through the entire cargo bay. The giant warrior collapsed to the floor with a crash that shook the ship. Captain Rodriguez stood over his body, breathing hard but victorious. 50 warriors, Jake said quietly. All of them bigger and stronger than her. All of them defeated by one small human who refused to give up. The aliens around the table looked at each other nervously. They were beginning to understand that humans were not the weak species they had thought. But the fight was not over, Jake continued. Korthak the Younger was still alive, and he was furious. He jumped down from the upper level to face Captain Rodriguez himself. The hologram showed the young admiral landing in the cargo bay. His golden armor gleamed in the emergency lighting, and his weapons were charged and ready. This time there would be no tricks, Jake said. No darkness, no surprise. Attacks. Just a straight fight between the human captain and the Raxan admiral. The picture showed the two fighters facing each other across the cargo bay. The human looked exhausted from her battle with the 50 warriors, while the admiral was fresh and ready to fight. Korthak the Younger was bigger than his father, Jake explained. He was also faster and more skilled. He had been training for this fight for 6 months, studying human combat techniques and learning their weaknesses. The young admiral raised his claws and activated his energy weapons. The air around him shimmered with deadly power. He attacked with everything he had, Jake continued. Energy blasts, razor-sharp claws, and the full weight of his armored body. He wanted to crush the human quickly and brutally. The hologram showed the admiral's fierce attack. Beams of energy lit up the cargo bay as he tried to destroy his enemy. But Captain Rodriguez had been studying too, Jake said. She had learned something important about Raxan warriors during her first fight. They were used to winning through strength and size. They were not used to fighting opponents who could think faster than they could move. The picture showed the human woman dodging the admiral's attacks with impossible grace. She moved like she could predict where he would strike before he knew it himself. She led him around the cargo bay, making him waste his energy on attacks that missed, Jake explained. She was patient, waiting for exactly the right moment to strike. The admiral's attacks became wilder and less controlled. He was getting frustrated and angry, which made him careless. When Korthak the Younger finally made a mistake, Jake said, Captain Rodriguez was ready. He overextended himself during an attack, leaving his neck exposed for just a moment. The hologram showed the human woman moving like lightning. She struck the admiral's neck armor with precise force, hitting the same nerve cluster she had used on his father. The young admiral collapsed just like his father had, Jake said. But this time, Captain Rodriguez did not stop there. The picture showed the human woman standing over the fallen admiral. Her expression was cold and merciless. She looked around the cargo bay at the 50 dead warriors, Jake continued. Then she looked down at Korthak the Younger and said something that would be remembered across the galaxy. The aliens leaned forward to hear what the human had said. She said, "Tell your people what happens when they threaten humans. Tell them what happens when they break their word. Tell them that we are small, but we are not weak. And tell them that we never forget." The hologram showed Captain Rodriguez walking away from the unconscious admiral. She moved through the cargo bay full of defeated enemies, like a queen walking through her palace. "She left the ship and returned to the human fleet," Jake said. "The Raxan fleet retreated without firing a single shot. They had learned the lesson that many species would learn in the years to come." Jake turned off the hologram and looked around the table at the alien delegates. "Do you know what that lesson was?" The room was completely silent. None of the aliens wanted to answer. "The lesson was simple," Jake said quietly. "Humans are not the biggest or strongest species in the galaxy, but we are the most dangerous when we are protecting our own." The aliens around the table sat in uncomfortable silence. Jake Morrison had just told them a story that changed everything they thought they knew about humans. The small species they had dismissed as weak had defeated one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. "But surely," Vexstar said, clicking his mandibles nervously, "this was just one incident. One lucky victory does not make your entire species dangerous." Jake smiled, but his green eyes remained cold. "You are right. One victory proves nothing." But word of what happened to the Raxan spread quickly across the galaxy. Within a year, 3 other species decided to test humanity's strength for themselves. He pressed a button on his device, and the hologram came back to life. This time, it showed a star map with different colored lights marking various alien territories. "The first to challenge us was the Nethrix Collective," Jake said. "They were a trading empire that controlled the major shipping routes in the Outer Rim. They had heard about Captain Rodriguez and the Raxan, but they thought it was just a lucky accident." The hologram showed sleek blue ships with curved hulls and advanced weapons. They looked fast and dangerous, built for hit-and-run attacks. "The Nethrix believed that humans were too young and inexperienced to understand space warfare," Jake continued. "They thought our victory over the Raxan was just beginner's luck. So they decided to teach us a lesson." The picture changed to show a blockade of human trade routes. Dozens of Nethrix ships were stopping human cargo vessels and demanding payment for safe passage. They set up what they called a protection fee, Jake explained. Any human ship that wanted to pass through their territory had to pay 20% of their cargo value. If they refused, the Nethrix would destroy the ship. Ambassador Flux's gas swirled with interest. "This is a common practice among older species. We have all done such things to newcomers." "Yes," Jake agreed, but the Nethrix made the same mistake the Raxan had made. They thought humans would simply accept their demands because we were weak and outnumbered. The hologram showed human cargo, ships being stopped and searched by Nethrix vessels. The alien ships were larger and had better weapons, so it looked like an easy victory for the Nethrix. "For 2 weeks, human traders paid the fees," Jake said. The Nethrix thought they had won. They began making plans to increase the fees and expand their control over human space. The picture showed Nethrix commanders celebrating in their ships. They were tall, thin creatures with blue skin and large heads. They looked proud and confident. But during those 2 weeks, human intelligence officers were studying the Nethrix fleet, Jake continued. They learned the alien patrol patterns, communication codes, and supply routes. They discovered that the Nethrix had one major weakness. Crystalline's lights flickered with curiosity. What weakness? The Nethrix were excellent at individual ship combat, Jake explained. Each of their vessels was faster and more powerful than human ships, but they had never learned to work together as a coordinated fleet. The hologram showed the Nethrix ships moving in loose formations. Each captain acted independently, trying to claim the most valuable human cargo for themselves. On the 15th day of the blockade, Jake said, the humans struck back. But they did not attack with superior weapons or larger ships. They attacked with superior tactics. The picture changed to show human ships approaching the Nethrix blockade. The human vessels looked small and weak compared to the alien ships. Commander Kevin Walsh led the human response, Jake continued. He was a former chess champion who had studied the Nethrix for years. He knew exactly how they would react to different situations. The hologram showed a middle-aged human man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He was standing on the bridge of a human cruiser, calmly giving orders to his crew. Commander Walsh sent his ships in groups of 3, Jake explained. Each group attacked a different part of the Nethrix blockade at the same time. The aliens had to choose which attacks to respond to. The picture showed the human attack beginning. Small groups of human ships were hitting the Nethrix blockade from multiple directions. The Nethrix captains all wanted to be the hero who defeated the human attack, Jake said. Instead of working together, they competed with each other to destroy the most human ships. The hologram showed the alien vessels breaking formation and chasing after different human groups. The coordinated blockade fell apart as each captain tried to claim individual glory. That was exactly what Commander Walsh had planned, Jake continued. Once the Nethrix ships were scattered and fighting individually, the real human fleet appeared. The picture showed hundreds of human ships dropping out of hyperspace around the confused Nethrix vessels. The aliens were suddenly surrounded and outnumbered. The Nethrix had been so focused on the small human attacks that they had not noticed the main fleet approaching, Jake explained. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. A hologram showed the battle that followed. The scattered Nethrix ships were defeated one by coordinated human attacks. The aliens' superior weapons were useless when they were outnumbered and surrounded. The Nethrix lost 60% of their fleet that day, Jake said. The survivors fled back to their home space and never bothered human traders again. The Braxton delegate rumbled like distant thunder. The Nethrix were always overconfident. What about the other species that challenged you? Jake pressed another button, and the hologram changed to show a different type of alien ship. These vessels were blocky and heavily armored, built for attacking planets rather than fighting other ships. The Vorluk Union was the second species to test human strength, Jake said. They were a mining empire that needed new sources of rare metals. They had heard about the human colonies in the asteroid belt and decided to take them by force. The picture showed massive alien landing ships approaching human mining stations. The stations looked defenseless against such a powerful invasion force. The Vorlok were different from the Raxan or the Nethrix, Jake explained. They were not interested in honor or individual glory. They just wanted to conquer human territory and take our resources. The hologram showed the Vorlok themselves. They were short and stocky, with thick armor-like skin and powerful arms. They looked like they had been built for hard physical labor. The Vorlok thought human miners would be easy to defeat, Jake continued. They believed that civilians could not fight back against trained soldiers. They were wrong. The picture showed the alien invasion beginning. Thousands of Vorlok warriors were landing on human mining stations, expecting to find helpless workers. What they found instead were humans who had been preparing for this attack for months, Jake said. You see, human miners are not just workers. They are also engineers, inventors, and survivors. The hologram showed the human miners fighting back with improvised weapons and clever traps. They had turned their mining equipment into weapons and their stations into fortresses. The Vorlok warriors were trained to fight other soldiers, Jake explained. They were not prepared for an enemy that could turn everyday tools into deadly weapons. The picture showed human miners using mining lasers as weapons, explosive charges as bombs, and heavy machinery as shields. They fought with desperate creativity that the aliens could not match. The battle lasted for 3 days, Jake said. Every human mining station became a fortress. Every corridor became a trap. Every room became a battlefield. The hologram showed the fighting spreading throughout the asteroid belt. The Vorlek had expected a quick victory, but instead they found themselves in a grinding war of attrition. By the end of the 3rd day, the Vorlek had lost half their invasion force, Jake continued. The humans had fought them to a standstill, using nothing but mining equipment and determination. The aliens around the table looked impressed despite themselves. Fighting off a trained invasion force with improvised weapons was no small feat. But the most important part of the story came on the 4th day, Jake said. That was when the human military arrived. A hologram showed sleek human warships dropping out of hyperspace around the asteroid belt. The ships were smaller than the Vorlek vessels, but they moved with deadly purpose. Admiral Nancy Cooper led the human fleet, Jake explained. She was known for her creative tactics and her absolute refusal to accept defeat. When she saw what the Vorlek had done to human civilians, she was furious. The picture showed a stern-faced woman with short blonde hair and ice-blue eyes. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the aftermath of the Vorlek attack with cold anger. Admiral Cooper sent a message to the Vorlak fleet, Jake said. She told them they had one chance to surrender and leave human space peacefully. If they refused, she would destroy every Vorlak ship in the system. The hologram showed the Vorlak commander's response. He was a massive alien covered in scars from previous battles. He laughed at the human admiral's demands and promised to crush her fleet. The Vorlak commander made the same mistake that all of humanity's enemies make, Jake continued. He looked at the human ships and saw that they were smaller and fewer in number. He thought this meant they were weaker. The picture showed the two fleets facing each other in space. The Vorlak ships were bigger and more heavily armed, but the human vessels moved with coordinated precision. The battle lasted 6 hours, Jake sighed. The meeting room was completely silent. The alien delegates stared at Jake Morrison with new understanding. The small human who had walked into their chamber an hour ago was no longer just a diplomat from a young species. He was a representative of something much more dangerous. Vexstar was the first to speak. His mandibles clicked nervously as he shifted in his massive chair. Commander Morrison, perhaps we have been too hasty in our judgments about humanity. Jake smiled, and this time it was a genuine expression of warmth rather than cold warning. I appreciate your honesty, Ambassador Vexstar. That is exactly what I was hoping to hear. Ambassador Flux's gas swirled in slow, thoughtful patterns. Your stories explain much about human nature, but they also raise important questions. If your species is so dangerous when provoked, how can we trust you as trading partners? That is an excellent question, Jake replied, opening his briefcase and pulling out a stack of documents. The answer is simple. Humans are only dangerous to those who threaten us or our allies. We have no interest in conquest or domination. We want partnership, trade, and mutual benefit. Crystalline's internal lights flickered with cautious interest. What kind of partnership do you propose? Jake spread the documents across the table so all the delegates could see them. The papers were covered with charts, graphs, and technical specifications. Humanity has developed technologies that could benefit all of your species, he explained. For example, we have created new agricultural techniques that could increase food production on Krellian worlds by 40%. Vexstar leaned forward to examine the agricultural data. His 4 eyes scanned the information quickly, and his mandibles clicked with surprise. These methods, they are remarkably efficient. How did you develop them? Necessity, Jake replied. Earth has limited farmable land, so we had to learn how to grow more food in smaller spaces. When we began colonizing other worlds, We adapted these techniques for different environments and soil types. The Krellian delegate studied the charts more carefully. His species had struggled with food shortages for centuries due to their rapidly growing population. The human techniques could solve a major problem for his people. What do you offer the rest of us? Rumbled the Braxton delegate, his rocky voice echoing through the chamber. Jake pulled out another set of documents. For the Etherians, we have developed atmospheric processors that can make gas clouds more stable and long-lasting. Your people could expand into new regions of space that were previously uninhabitable. Ambassador Flux's containment suit hummed with excitement as the gas inside swirled faster. These processors, they could allow us to colonize systems we have only dreamed of reaching. For the Zephyrians, Jake continued, we have discovered mineral extraction methods that are much more efficient than current techniques. You could harvest rare crystals from asteroids and moons that were previously considered worthless. Crystalline's lights shifted to a bright gold color, indicating intense interest. Show me these methods. Jake handed her a technical manual filled with detailed diagrams and procedures. The process uses harmonic resonance to separate valuable minerals from common rock. It is completely non-destructive and leaves the surrounding environment untouched. The crystalline delegate studied the manual with growing excitement. Her people were master miners, but these human techniques were far beyond anything they had developed. This is impressive, she admitted. But what does humanity want in return for sharing these technologies? Jake's expression became serious. Again, knowledge. Your species have been exploring the galaxy for thousands of years. You have seen wonders we can barely imagine and developed technologies we are only beginning to understand. He gestured around the table at each delegate. The Krellians have mastered biological engineering. The Etherians understand energy manipulation better than any other species. The Zephyrians have unlocked the secrets of matter transformation. The Braxtons have developed construction techniques that can build structures lasting millions of years. The aliens looked at each other with new respect. Jake had clearly studied each of their civilizations extensively. Share that knowledge with us, Jake continued, and we will share our innovations with you. Together, we can solve problems that none of us could handle alone. The Vorthic delegate, who had been silent throughout most of the meeting, finally spoke. This sounds like a fair arrangement, but how do we know humans will keep their promises? Your stories show that your species can be unpredictable when angered. Jake nodded thoughtfully. You raise a valid concern. Let me tell you something else about humans that might ease your fears. He pulled out one final document from his briefcase. This one was different from the others. It was handwritten in multiple languages and signed by dozens of different names. This is a copy of the Haven's Rest Memorial Accord, Jake explained. After the Silthery attacks, human leaders realized that our response had frightened many species. They created this document to explain our intentions and limitations. The delegates leaned forward to examine the accord. The writing was formal but clear, laying out principles for human interaction with other species. The accord states that humanity will never attack first, Jake continued. We will never conquer territory for expansion. We will never force our values on other cultures. But we will defend ourselves, our allies, and innocent civilians with whatever force is necessary. Ambassador Flux studied the document carefully. This accord ... It is signed by every human government? Every one, Jake confirmed, from Earth to the farthest colonies. It represents the unanimous agreement of our entire species about how we will conduct ourselves in the galaxy. The Quillix delegate, who had been changing colors throughout the meeting, finally settled on a calm blue. If we agree to this partnership, what guarantees do we have that humans will honor their commitments? Jake smiled and gestured to himself. I am here, alone, in a room full of beings who could easily overpower me. I have no guards, no weapons, no protection, except your goodwill. That should tell you something about how seriously humanity takes diplomatic agreements. The aliens looked around at each other, suddenly realizing the significance of Jake's situation. He had walked into potential danger with nothing but trust in their honor. Furthermore, Jake continued, every human trade agreement includes enforcement mechanisms. If we break our promises, you have the right to cancel all deals and seek compensation. We are willing to put our reputation and our future relationships at stake. Crystalline's lights shifted to a warm purple. You have given us much to consider, Commander Morrison. These proposals are more generous than we expected. They are fair, Jake corrected. Humanity learned long ago that the best partnerships are based on mutual benefit. When everyone gains something valuable, everyone has reason to maintain the relationship. The Braxton delegate rumbled thoughtfully. Your species has an interesting philosophy. Most young civilizations seek to take from others. You offer to share. That is because we understand something important, Jake replied. The galaxy is a dangerous place. There are threats out there that no single species can handle alone. By working together, sharing knowledge and resources, we all become stronger. Vexstar clicked his mandibles in agreement. The Raxan, Nethrix, Volek, and Siltheri all learned that lesson too late. They chose conflict over cooperation. Exactly, Jake said. Humanity does not want to repeat their mistakes. We would rather build alliances than fight wars. The meeting room fell silent again as the delegates considered Jake's proposal. The small human sat patiently, waiting for their decision. He had presented his case as clearly as possible. Now it was up to them to choose. Finally, Ambassador Flux spoke for the group. Commander Morrison, we would like to schedule detailed negotiations. Your proposals deserve serious consideration. Jake's smile grew wider. I was hoping you would say that. I have a full team of specialists standing by to work out the technical details. But first, Crystalline added, we must ask one more question. If we become allies of humanity, does that mean we will be protected the way you protected Havens? Rest? Jake's expression became solemn. If you become our allies, you become part of our family. And humans protect their family with everything they have. The alien delegates exchanged glances, and Jake could see the moment when their decision was made. The Krellian was the first to stand, extending one of his 4 hands toward the human. Commander Morrison, Vextar said formally, the Krellian. Trade Federation would be honored to explore a formal alliance with humanity. One by one, the other delegates stood and offered similar statements. The Etherians, Zephyrians, Vorthix, Braxans, Morphians, and Quillix all agreed to begin serious negotiations. Jake stood as well, shaking hands or performing appropriate greetings with each delegate. Despite being the smallest person in the room, he suddenly seemed to fill the entire space with his presence. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored entities, he said formally, I believe this is the beginning of something remarkable. Together, our species will explore new worlds, solve ancient problems, and build a future none of us could achieve alone. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, each one looked back at the small human with new respect. They had come to the meeting expecting to deal with a weak, you